Today, we are reviewing the Canon FD-135 2.5 vintage lens. This is a rather hefty lens. I haven't actually used it a whole lot because 135 is a focal length that is kind of niche. I tend to use lenses usually between 16 to 50 millimeters for the type of photography I tend to do. However, this is actually a pretty darn good lens. Has extremely long focus throw. It goes from about focusing distance of 5 feet, or how many meters is that? 1.5 meters. All the way to infinity, but it has markings to like up to 100 feet. So there does take a lot of fine tuning with the focusing process, as you will see in this video. I would say that this is probably one of the better lenses for portrait photography because 135 millimeter tends to be really good at creating that creamy, dreamy focus. And I have a cat who wants to say hello because all of a sudden there's excitement in the house. Anyways, I took this lens out to do some landscape photography and wandered around downtown to check it out for a more urban setting, and I will show off the results. It's another Tucson morning. I'm testing the lens. This, of course, is the outdoor nature landscape portion of the test, and we'll see how it works out. That mountain up there, you can't see it really well on the GoPro, but there's a moon up there. We'll see if we can include it in the picture. Just stepping all over everything on the desert floor today. So the crested cactus, it's a pretty rare phenomenon that causes the top of a cactus to kind of look like the character from The Last of Us. I'll have to look up the statistics of how often this happens, but it's really rare. Regardless, whenever I see one out in the wild, I definitely want to get a picture of it. Got ourselves a barrel cactus here. Got to get a picture of that. Test this lens out. I took a couple shots of the barrel cactus close up, probably at f2.5. As you can see, the depth of field is very touchy. It's really hard to get a fully in focus shot. But I went for the needles and the flowers. You can kind of see the dreamy, soft background and quite the narrow depth of field. There's another crested cactus off in the distance. So you can see how the telephoto works on this. It does a reasonably good job of kind of zooming in to the subject. I was at quite a distance, of course. The focus is a tad soft, but that is to be expected. It was a warm day, and sometimes a little bit of heat distortions in the air can make a focus a little bit more difficult. Well, that looks like the world's smallest parachute drop zone target. Here's another mountain I'll try to get a shot of to test the landscapeability of it. If you're out in nature and you want to get a landscape shot that's more of a wide angle thing, always remember you can stitch together several photos in a row. That's my tip of the day. I'll send you an invoice later. And for those unfamiliar with the concept of stitching together photos, what you do is you take a series of photos that have overlapping elements, and when you get to your editing program later like Photoshop, you can combine them into one wide view, which I will show you right now. As you can see now, we have an actual landscape photo that captures quite a bit more than a single frame of a 135 millimeter lens. Plus, you also get that cool compression of elements in a photo, such as the distant mountains seeming a bit closer than they might to the naked eye. Learning to do panorama and stitching together photos is a great skill to have for taking photos. And we have a neat little collection of barrel cactuses clustered together. The pair of photos I took of these barrel cactus clusters, it definitely demonstrated that you can get a nice sharp image here, which is really cool. Here's the second one. The needles make it really easy to use the camera's EV to zoom in and make sure the focus is nice and sharp. Looks like we have a DIY bench there. I'm not going to sit on it though, that'll collapse. Well, so far, this lens is doing all right as far as functionality goes. It does require quite a bit of fine tuning on the focusing process because the range is so vast before you get to the infinity. You have the ability to really dial in a good focus, I think, but it takes a while. So this is a lens for people who like deliberate photography. It would be pretty awful for anything fast moving, that's for sure. But so far so good. We'll see how the images turn out on the computer when I get home. And sure enough, moments after I said it probably isn't good for fast moving things, a jet flying into Tucson International Airport went overhead, and I took a quick shot. And honestly, not bad. Not bad. I still would not want to use this for wildlife photography or sports photography. Alright, gonna try using the minimum focusing distance to get a picture of those little buds there. I'm actually pretty happy with the couple of shots I took of the saguaro buds there. Looks like it's when I zoom in and do the dreaded pixel peeping, it's actually pretty sharp, but you also get the blurry soft background, which is kind of nice. This shot in particular I'm very happy with. I'll be showing an edited version of the landscape shots shortly. But it looks very nice. Got a couple things I can get photos of here. Rusty and pretty. Here's the photo of the rusty wire wrapped around a pole. Got a pretty nice sharp focus on that. Kind of love the blurry background. And here is the barrel cactus with the flowers. And if you look closely, you can see a bee. For the urban exploration portion of the lens test, I wandered around parts of downtown Tucson. I decided not to bring along the GoPro to film what I was doing because I really don't like the idea of filming strangers or bringing any attention to myself with having a device around. So instead, we're going to go through the unedited raw photos of my exploration. Here we have some old signs that I kind of like. As you can see, zooming in, it's pretty nice and sharp. There are a lot of wires in this photo, so it's not exactly one I would use for a composition for a photo I would actually edit and show off. Here we have another old sign. Once again, pretty sharp focus. Hotel Glenwood. This is where I'm starting to realize this lens actually shines quite nicely if you can just get that focus dialed in. And attempt to take some flowers. There's a little bit of some vibrance to it, so you don't get quite as many details on any unedited version, of course. Here is some industrial things like the narrow depth of focus, so you do get some blurriness back there. Does look like it has a little bit of fringing going on, but photo editing software can always take care of that. Just a picture down the street. You can see like the heat distortion. Here is another attempt at taking photos of flowers. Not too bad on the detail, but I did kind of blow the composition on this one, so we shall move on. Here is a metal sculpture that I thought turned out really nicely. Got pretty good sharpness, as well as this guy. Here is a really cool sculpture outside of somebody's apartment or condo. Once again, nailing the focus. I would have preferred to gotten on the eye, but this is still a very usable photo. One of the murals. I accidentally shot this at a more wide open aperture than I meant to, so it's a little bit softer focus, but still like it. Here's an old building with some fading paint. Thought the detail turned out quite nicely in this. Hotel Congress neon sign. As you can probably see from all this, the lens was doing a great job of capturing some of the urban elements. Sneck in a tree. Somebody made a bit of a, I guess, sculpture or street art around this, what looks like a something in the brick called Sweet Poochie. Anyways, pretty cool urban art there. Just a picture of a marquee for one of the theaters. Once again, really liking the focus on this. And finally, we got a picture of a flower. This one, I think I did nail the focus. This one turned out really nicely. And you got that creamy background blur. That is the whole point of having one of these lenses. Now we'll go through some of the edited photos you just saw. You can see with all the levels fixed in Photoshop, these look quite nice. Very vibrant. See a little bit of a adjustment to the sharpness levels. This bird looks much cooler. There's Sneck again. Poochie. And the flower. So in summary, I have to say this is actually a fantastic lens. It has that Canon quality that people have relied on over the years. For landscape, it may not be the first lens I grab just because the 135mm focal length isn't the best for landscape. Stitching together photos gets you around that. It was excellent for the urban and walking around downtown, capturing city details aspect. This lens also seems to be something you can find for anywhere between $50 to $100 on eBay. So it's slightly pricier than some of the budget lenses I've come across, but is also quite affordable for the quality it brings. I also believe it would be fantastic for portrait photography, and hopefully soon I'll be talking my friend into doing a little session so I can test out some of these lenses. Anyhow, I'm giving this lens a solid A. And if you're looking for a vintage lens to pick up, especially for portrait photography, this is one to grab.